Satyam Jnanam Satyam Jnanam Jyoti Aurobinda Jyoti Aurobinda. Let's go to our next screen share. Vijay, our next screen share. Yeah. So this is the story of the Golden Buddha. In Bangkok, there is a golden statue of the Buddha that stands 9 feet 8 inches tall, weighs 5.5 tons. 1 ton is 1,000 kilos, and is worth approximately 250 million in its gold. The statue was thought to be built in 1403 and was revered by the Buddhists for many hundreds of years. In 1757, the Burmese army was invading Thailand. Facing complete annihilation, the Buddhist monks of the monastery hastily began covering the Golden Buddha with plaster, which was painted and inlaid with bits of colored glass to make it look of little or no value to the invading army. During the invasion, all the Buddhist monks were tragically murdered. The Golden Buddha was left undiscovered. In 1957, an entire monastery in Thailand was being relocated by a group of monks. One day, they were moving a giant clay Buddha when one of the monks noticed a large crack in the clay. On closer investigation, he saw there was a golden light emanating from the crack. The monk used a hammer and a chisel to chip away at the clay exterior until he saw that the statue was in fact made of solid gold. In yoga, we come to the mat and ask ourselves, who are we really? Why am I here? And where am I going? What this story so eloquently explains is that inside each of us there lives a golden Buddha of light. Our purpose in life is to rediscover our Buddha for ourselves. What happens over the course of our life is that we pile layer upon layer of clay over our own golden Buddha. The heaviest layer of clay is of our own doing. It's our own ego and its limited thinking along with our unconscious conditioning. The other layers of clay get added on from external influences, parents, schools, teachers, bosses, co-workers, society, media, church, government, corporation. Eventually, we are all so laden with clay that we forget the golden Buddha is there all the time. The secret to finding our golden Buddha, our higher purpose, lies not in the future but in our past. All we need to do is start chipping away at the clay and rediscovering those things we were passionate about as we grew up. We reconnect with the things that first brought joy into our lives. We recall the times when we were in the flow and time stood still. We chip away at our clay on the yoga mat and we get flows. That golden light from within us will once again re-emerge. Imagine a world where every person could return to their natural state, their golden Buddha. Just imagine. Release the screen share. So this story tells us that within each of us, there is a golden Buddha. And what is this golden Buddha? This golden Buddha is a state of self-existent joy and peace. That is the very fabric of what we are. We are always waiting for the external to bring us this joy and peace. But the point of this story is that we'll never find it outside unless we look into our depths and we find the golden Buddha. And every now and then, in the moments of mundane ordinariness, when suddenly we light up, suddenly we feel a different kind of existence, it's like the gleam of the golden light coming from that golden Buddha inside us, showing itself to us even as a flicker and then vanishing. Next screen share. So this is from Savitri. What in the story is called the Golden Buddha. In Savitri, Sri Aurobindo refers to as the Deathless Rose. What is the Deathless Rose? The God intelligence which permeates everything, which is us in our deepest. And a rose is a symbol of love, and deathless because it's eternal. Even when the body, mind, emotions are withering in the moment, in the background, this deathless rose is in a state of eternal bloom. That's the golden Buddha inside us, our God nature. About the spirit, cased in mortal sense, are superconscious realms of heavenly peace. Below the inconscience, sullen, dim abyss. Between, behind our life, the deathless rose. Below the inconscience, sullen, dumb abyss. Above the spirit, between, behind, everywhere is the deathless rose. Across the covered, hidden air, the spirit breathes. A body of cosmic beauty and joy, unseen, unguessed by the blind, suffering world. So across the hidden air of the spirit's breaths, there's a body of cosmic beauty and joy. That's the deathless rose. But this rose is unseen, unguessed by the blind, suffering world. The blind, suffering world is us. We can't guess, we can't see this deathless rose which is hidden in every atom and cell of our body. Across the covered air, the spirit breathes, a body of cosmic beauty and joy, unseen, unguessed by the blind, suffering world, climbing from nature's deep, surrendered heart. It blooms forever at the feet of God. So this God nature, this deathless rose, is an intelligence which is in a state of deep joy and peace and unconditional surrender. So metaphorically, this is a deathless rose which is blooming forever at the feet of God, but is God also. So unseen, unguessed by the blind, suffering world, climbing from nature's deep, surrendered heart, it blooms forever at the feet of God, fed by life's sacrificial mysteries, Here too, its bud is born in human breasts. The bud of that deathless rose in the human breast is a psychic being. Here too, its bud is born in human breasts. Then, by a touch, a presence, or a voice, the world is turned into a temple ground, and all discloses the unknown beloved. So this deathless rose is in our heart as the psychic being, and when a touch comes, the touch of the master or a guru, a presence or a voice, that bud unfolds. And when that bud unfolds, the whole world is turned into a temple ground. Everything becomes sacred. And all discloses the unknown beloved. The vision of that deathless rose is so different from the mental vision that when that deathless rose starts seeing, all discloses the unknown beloved in an outburst of heavenly joy and ease. Life yields to the divinity within, the golden Buddha within. Life acknowledges it, life sees it, and gives the rapture offering of its all. And the soul opens to felicity, joy. A bliss is felt that never can wholly cease. There's this unconditional bliss which never changes with the changing ups and downs of life then. A sudden mystery of secret grace flowers, goldening our earth of red desire. Such a beautiful line. Normally, what the soil from which our flowers of fulfillment come is desire. We are happy when a desire is fulfilled, not happy when it's not. But Sri Aurobindo trenchantly emphasizes that the whole mechanism of human living has to change from desire being the motive force of existence to a self-existent joy of our divine nature. So when that divine nature flowers, desire is the color of red, passion. But we don't kill desire. We transform the red of desire, of passion and hunger into the gold of the spirit. So a sudden mystery of secret grace flowers, goldening our earth of red desire. All the high gods who hid their visages, their appearances, from the soiled, passionate ritual of our hopes, reveal their names and their undying powers. So when we come to this spiritual fruition, gods who belong to the overmental plane, they start also revealing themselves. A fiery stillness wakes the slumbering cells, a passion of the flesh becoming spirit, and marvelously fulfilled at last, the miracle for which our life was made. Now let's just be quiet as I read this passage without explanation. About the spirit cased in mortal sense are superconscious realms of heavenly peace. Below the inconscient, sullen, dim abyss, between, behind our life, the deathless rose. Across the covered air, the spirit breathes, a body of the cosmic beauty and joy, unseen, unguessed by the blind, suffering world, climbing from nature's deep, surrendered heart, It blooms forever at the feet of God, fed by life's sacrificial mysteries. Here too, its bud is born in human breasts, then by a touch, a presence, or a voice, the world is turned into a temple ground, and all discloses the unknown beloved. In an outburst of heavenly joy and ease, life yields to the divinity within and gives the rapture offering of its all, and the soul opens to felicity. A bliss is felt that never can wholly cease, a sudden mystery of secret grace, flowers goldening our earth of red desire. All the high gods who fit their visages from the soiled, passionate ritual of our hopes reveal their names and their undying powers. A fiery stillness wakes the slumbering cells, the passion of the flesh becoming spirit, and marvelously fulfilled at last, the miracle for which our life was made. Next, again Savitri, the Maya. Maya is soil. Here, metaphorically, it's our human ignorance. The soil of human ignorance, this Maya must harbor the orchid and the rose. The significance Mother has given the orchid is attachment to the divine, and rose is divine love. So this ignorance, which is so ego-centered, so about me, myself, I, must transform into the orchid attachment to the divine and not to our desires, and the rose, divine love. This Maya must harbor the orchid and the rose. From her blind, unwilling substance must emerge a beauty that belongs to happier spheres. This is the destiny bequeathed to her. Her here means Prakriti, nature. In Savitri, her can be used for the Divine Mother, for the person Savitri, or for Prakriti. She or her can be used for any of these three. Here it's for Prakriti. This is the destiny bequeathed to her, left to her, as if a slain god. This is rhetorical. God is not slain, but because the God element in us, the psychic being, is asleep behind so many veils, it's as if to our waking state, it's not alive. So, as if a slain God left a golden trust to a blind force and an imprisoned soul. So beautiful. Our state is like this, as if a slain god has left a golden trust, this golden Buddha has to be discovered, but not by somebody very equipped, by a blind force and an imprisoned soul, by Prakriti, the blind nature force, an imprisoned soul, Purusha, which is not yet awake to himself. So this Maya must harbor the orchid and the rose. From her blind, unwilling substance must emerge a beauty that belongs to happier spheres. This is the destiny bequeathed to her, as if a slain god left a golden trust to a blind force and an imprisoned soul. So, we may think that what is the point of knowing all this when the point is that We cannot experience it. But that's the power of Sri Aurobindo's words. Whatever he writes, and Savitri particularly, is mantric. There's no greater aid in integral yoga than to just read his words, because just reading them transforms you. I could have told you this concept very simply in 3 or 4 sentences, but you'd have said, nice, no big deal beyond that. But when you read it in his language, he has used the English language to transmit consciousness, which is why so much of our evening sessions are trying to speak less and less and have more and more of his words with us, because those words have the power to transform us, not intellectual concepts. So strongly suggest that all of you start reading Savitri or Synthesis, even half a page or 1 page every day. In the beginning, it may be like reading Sanskrit, but it has the direct power to work on your consciousness and change it. It's like Sri Aurobindo is a rishi who's tasted the spiritual ice cream and has the ability to write it in a way that just reading his words, we can have some taste of that ice cream. So just wanted to emphasize that before we go ahead. Next. Vijay, can we have the next screen share? Oh, I think Vijay's been logged out. So just give me a minute. Let me see what I can do. Can it be a little larger? Vijay, if you mail me the PDF, I will screen share it. Self-surrender in the works, the way of the Gita. Our purpose in yoga is to exile the limited outward-looking ego and to enthrone God in its place as the ruling inhabitant of nature. This is from his Synthesis of Yoga. Now, this is very important. Right now, we cannot even imagine a way of being where somehow our self-interest, disguised or not, is all absorbing and prominent. If we are really honest with ourselves, anything we do, there's a question, what will I gain from it? How will I appear? How will it reflect on me? There's a constant revolution around our sense of I, the ego. And for us, in the beginning, it's just a concept that it can be anything else. But Sri Aurobindo says, our purpose in yoga is to exile the limited outward-looking ego and to enthrone God in its place as the ruling inhabitant of nature. Our purpose in yoga is to exile, throw out the limited outward looking ego and to enthrone God in its place as the ruling inhabitant of nature. What does this mean? This means supposing I'm doing anything. Finally, I do it for my ego. I do it to feel good. I do it to feel satiated. I do it for myself. But somewhere in the beginning, even just as a thought, it has to change to I'm not doing it for myself because I've recognized that I don't exist separate from the whole. Whatever I do for the beloved. Brian Adams has that song, Everything I do it for you. Here we don't apply it to a partner, but we apply it to God. Whatever we do, we are doing for this eternal presence, for this deathless rose that blooms from behind. And this means first to disinherit desire and no longer accept the enjoyment of desire as the ruling human motive. The spiritual life will draw its sustenance not from desire, but from a pure and selfless spiritual delight of essential existence. Such a beautiful sentence. The spiritual life will draw its sustenance not from desire, but from a pure and selfless spiritual delight of essential existence. Uh, in Savitri, this was expressed differently as goldening the red soil of our desire. That goldening means to draw our sustenance, our motivation to live, not from the fulfillment of desire, but from the pure and selfless delight of essential existence. Just repeat this in your heart. Pure and spiritual, selfless spiritual delight of essential existence. The unsatisfying surface play of our feeble egoistic emotions must be ousted, and there must be revealed instead a secret, deep, and vast psychic heart within. That's the deathless rose that waits behind them for its hour. All our feelings impelled by this inner heart in which dwells the divine will be transmuted into calm and intense movements of twin passion of divine love and manifold Ananda. Okay, Bijal, have you emailed it to me?
Yes, miss.
Okay, so just remove the screen share and I'll share it. Maybe it will be larger and everyone can read. So spiritual life will draw its sustenance not from desire, but from a pure and selfless spiritual delight of essential existence. The unsatisfying surface play of our feeble egoistic emotions must be ousted, And there must be revealed instead that secret, deep, and vast psychic heart within that waits behind them for its hour. All our feelings impelled by this inner heart, in which dwells the divine, will be transmuted into calm and intense movements of twin passion of divine love and manifold Ananda. The practice of this yoga demands a constant inward remembrance of the one central liberating knowledge and a constant active externalizing of it in works comes into to intensify the remembrance. So the practice of integral yoga demands one constant smaran. What is the smaran? In all is the one self, the one divine is all are in the divine, all are the divine, and there is nothing else in the universe. This thought or this faith is the whole background until it becomes the whole substance of the consciousness of the worker. A memory, a self-dynamizing meditation of this kind. So Sri Aurobindo doesn't really recommend compulsorily sitting meditation. He's saying if you're interacting with life with this constant smaran that all is the beloved, all is the divine, that is the self-dynamizing meditation he's talking about. Must and does in its end turn into a profound and uninterrupted vision and a vivid and all-embracing consciousness of that which we so powerfully remember or on which we so constantly meditate. For it compels a constant reference at each moment to the origin of all being and will and action. And there is at once an embracing and exceeding of all particular forms and appearances in that which is at their cause and upholder. This way cannot go to its end without a seeing vivid and vital, as concrete in its way as physical sight, of the works of the universal spirit everywhere. On its summits, it rises into a constant living and thinking and willing and acting in the presence of the supramental, the transcendent. Whatever we see and hear, whatever we touch and sense, all of which we are conscious, has to be known and felt by us as that which we worship. Such a beautiful line. Whatever we see and hear, the dog barking, the rude word, the praise, whatever we touch and sense, material objects, people, all of which we are conscious circumstances of life as well, has to be known and felt by us as that which we worship. So the whole world, as we read in Savitri, becomes a temple ground. On this ground, everything is sacred, everything is consecrated. So just this beautiful line, just repeat in your heart, all that I see and hear, touch and sense is that which I worship. All that I touch and see, hear and sense, all that I'm conscious of is that which I worship. All has to be turned into an image of the divinity perceived as a dwelling place of this Godhead, enveloped with eternal omnipresence, present everywhere. In its close, if not long before it, this way of works turns by communion with the divine presence, will, and force into a way of knowledge more complete and integral than any the mere creature intelligence can construct or search or the intellect can discover. So let's get the thread of our discussion. We started by saying that all of us have an undiscovered deathless rose or a golden Buddha inside us. But this information is not very useful for us if we don't know how to access it. And all of Sri Aurobindo's yoga is about giving us access to whatever extent to this deathless rose, this golden Buddha within us. What is the way? Sri Aurobindo says the heart of his yoga is a constant smaran, a constant remembrance that everything is the divine. Even that unpleasant person, even that pleasant person, everything without exception is the divine. That whatever I see is, as that beautiful song says, an ordinary miracle. It appears ordinary to my seeing, but it has the hidden miracle of the deathless rose inside it. So, to constantly remember that everything I perceive is the same as the one whom I worship and adore. The whole world becomes a temple ground, or at least I'm making my efforts to make it into a temple ground. Lastly, the practice of this yoga of sacrifice of our ego to the beyond ego. Lastly, the practice of this yoga of sacrifice compels us to renounce all the inner supports of egoism, casting them out of our mind and will and actions, and to eliminate its seed, its presence, its influence out of our nature. Uh, we see this so much in so many of the ashram publications. Some of the most beautiful books, beautiful artwork, but they'll never name the writer or they'll never name the artist because the writer or the artist has done it as an offering to the mother, and many of the authors prefer to not have their name so that their ego doesn't come into play when they are praised or blamed for it. So, in small ways, if we can learn to step back from this constant ego propagation, which all of us are somewhere victims of. We want to look good, we want to be recognized, but at the same time, the mother's way is kindness to everything, including your own ego. Sometimes, if the ego is very insistent about something, I may consciously indulge it like I'd indulge a child throwing a tantrum, knowing that I want to train the child out of the tantrum, but to constantly deny it and make it unhappy is not the way. It won't change. So while we are working with the ego, we have to understand its place, be kind even to our ego, not hate ourselves when we see the ego controlling us. It's a transient thing. In course of evolution, it will change. But right now, let me take my baby steps. I know it's very difficult to abolish the ego altogether because then, well, we have very little motivation to do anything if we don't have an ego kickback. So I mustn't do that. I must be kind with my ego. But wherever the ego will not be too hurt if I deny it some self-propagation, then let me hold back the ego. If I'm saying something, exaggerating something to people just so that I look good in the story, let me be aware of it and not exaggerate. In small ways, let me change my existence from living so that my sense of I looks good to people and to myself, to living so that whatever I do is my offering to the divine. All must be done for the divine. All must be directed towards the divine. Nothing must be attempted for ourselves as a separate existence. Nothing done for others, whether neighbors, friends, family, country, or mankind, or other creatures, merely because they are connected with our personal life and thought and sentiment, or because the ego takes a preferential interest in their welfare. In this way of doing and seeing, all works and all life becomes only a daily dynamic worship and service of the divine in the unbounded, limitless temple of his own vast cosmic existence. Life becomes more and more the sacrifice of the eternal and the individual, constantly offered to the eternal transcendence. So I think I am offering to God, but the I doesn't even exist. So life becomes more and more the sacrifice of the eternal, the deathless rose in the individual, constantly self-offered to the eternal transcendence. When nature, and we read those lines in Savitri, when nature, in an act of surrender, the deathless rose blooms at the feet of God. I'm not saying it verbatim, but we read something like that. The deathless rose offered at the feet of God by nature, which is in complete surrender. So the deathless rose in the individual offered to the deathless rose of the eternal transcendence. There is behind all this life the look of an eternal being upon its multitudinous becomings. Each of us is a becoming of that one eternal being. In Savitri, there's that beautiful line, the million-bodied one. So all of us are that one which is existing in a million bodies. So that is the eternal being, the million-bodied one. There is behind all this life the look of an eternal being upon its multitudinous becomings. There is around and everywhere in it the envelopment and penetration of a manifestation in time by an unmanifested, timeless, eternal. So there is around and everywhere in it, in this becoming, in this jagat, the envelopment, surrounding and penetration. So this deathless rose not only surrounds all existence, but penetrates it in time. Penetrated by what? An unmanifested, timeless, eternal. So all manifestation which exists in time is from behind the veil, penetrated and enveloped by an unmanifested, timeless, eternal. Now, these lines can't be explained, they just have to be felt, and they'll work to transform you. There is behind all this life the look of an eternal being upon its multitudinous becomings. There is around and everywhere in it the envelopment and penetration of a manifestation in time by an unmanifested, timeless, eternal. So, these are words of Rumi. He says, we are the mirror as well as the face in it. We are tasting the taste of eternity this minute, the timeless, penetrating time. We are pain and what cures pain. We are the eternal in the individual offering to the eternal in the transcendent. We are the cold, we are the sweet cold water and the jar that pours. So let's go through these lines again. If we have understood that all universe is the million-bodied one, then when I look at Neha, for instance, I'm really looking at myself. Neha is really a mirror which mirrors back to me myself, because everything is myself. We are the mirror as well as the face in it. We are tasting the taste of eternity this minute. We are pain. We are what cures the pain. We are the cold, sweet water and the jar that pours. We are the container and the content. We are the million-bodied one. And very often, when we love something in another, we are just loving a bit of ourselves reflected back to us in the other. So also when we hate something in another, we are hating a bit of ourselves reflected back to us by the other. So Mother says that if you have a particular darkness in you, you'll despise that darkness even more when you see it in another. So if I get very riled by somebody's jealous, competitive nature, it's because I have that in me. If I didn't have it in me, this person's jealousy or competitive nature won't rile me, because that person is just mirroring to me myself. Every so-called other is just a mirror reflecting some part of my own face back to me. Further, Rumi says, I want to hold you close like a lute, a musical instrument, so we can carry on with loving. Okay, we'll change that so that we can carry on with loving. You would rather throw stones at a mirror. I am your mirror, and here are the stones. So beautiful. So somebody who's God realized and sees himself in everyone, even a person who's behaving terribly, the God realized person will tell that person who's behaving terribly, I want to hold you close like a lute so we can carry on loving, because you are myself. I want to hold you close and love you. But you in your ignorance would rather throw stones at a mirror. You think you're cursing me or throwing stones at me, but I am only a mirror showing you your own face. You would rather throw stones at a mirror. I am your mirror, and here are the stones. I have no fight left in me, the God realized person will say. Who will I fight when everything is myself? You want to throw stones? Sure. I am your mirror, and here are the stones. So, our whole living can be so different if we constantly remember that everything is a seamless spectrum of God. Even that person we love, even that person we hate, everything is just an extension of myself, is just God, is just part of that same temple floor that the whole world has become. So now we come back to Savitri. The silent soul of all the world was there. A being lived, a presence and a power. A single person who was himself and all, and cherished nature's sweet and dangerous throbs, transfigured into beats divine and pure. So as the silent soul of the world is that million-bodied one, a being lived, a presence and a power, a single person who was himself and all, the million-bodied one, and cherished nature's sweet and dangerous throbs, transfigured into beats divine and pure, one who could love without return for love. So Sri Aurobindo emphasizes again and again that love is something that exists by itself. It doesn't need a return. It doesn't need a motive. It doesn't need affirmation. It can just be because it quenches itself. It doesn't need the response of the person to be quenched. So one who could love, and that's what the Deathless Rose is. It's love without the return for love. And we see this constantly in mother's interaction with people. There were, of course, very devoted people in the ashram, people who would give their lives for her. For example, there was Anudar who once told the mother that, Mother, if you tell me to jump out of the window, I'll do it right now because I know you'll somehow make me float. So mother smiled. Then Udar got excited and said that, Mother, tell me now. I want to do it now. Tell me to jump and I'll jump now. I want to experience floating. And the mother smiled and said, if and when the time comes, I'll make you do that also, but not now. But there were those kind of people in the ashram, and there were others who were full of revolt, who would constantly badmouth mother. There were some people who were mentally affected and would even try to physically attack the mother. There were all kinds of people, but her love never changed. Whether you were an Udar willing to jump at her bidding, or whether you were the person who badmouthed her, she continued to pour her grace and sweetness into each one. So, one who could love without return for love, meeting and turning to the best, the worst. It healed the bitter cruelties of earth, transforming all experience to delight, intervening in the sorrowful parts of birth. It rocked the cradle of the cosmic child. Cosmic child is the psychic being. Sri Aurobindo writes the nature of the cosmic child is always that of a cherub, a little baby dancing in delight. So sometimes that when we go through difficult experiences, we lose that childlike delight of the psychic, or it goes behind the veil. But there is a grace that somehow safeguards that cosmic child and doesn't let it get squashed. So even through the sorrowful parts of birth, whatever we are going through, intervening in the sorrowful parts of birth, it rocked the cradle of the cosmic child. Last time we read a passage from Savitri which said, across the awful Anu, which said, alive in a dead rotating universe, we whirl not here upon a casual globe, abandoned to a task beyond our force, even through the tangled anarchy called fate, and through the bitterness of death and fall, an outstretched hand is felt upon our lives. That outstretched hand is the same hand which is rocking the cradle of the cosmic child, the psychic being, and stilled all weeping with its hand of joy. It led things evil towards their secret good. Even when we are in ignorance and we are taking not so onward leading paths, there is a secret guidance of that outstretched hand which turns us towards the secret good, or even what we perceive as evil in our lives, it uses that to yield our secret good. It led things evil towards their secret good. It turned racked falsehood into happy truth. Its power was to reveal divinity. The power of this deathless rose, the psychic being in us, is to reveal that golden gleam of the golden Buddha hidden inside us. Infinite, co-evil with the mind of God, it bore within itself a seed, a flame, a seed from which the eternal is newborn, a flame that cancels death in mortal things. Let's just read this through together. The silent soul of all the world was there, a being lived, a presence and a power, a single person who was himself and all, and cherished nature's sweet and dangerous throbs, transfigured into beats divine and pure, one who could love without return for love, meeting and turning to the best the worst. It healed the bitter cruelties of earth, transforming all experience to delight, intervening in the sorrowful paths of birth. It rocked the cradle of the cosmic child and stilled all weeping with its hand of joy. It led things evil towards their secret good. It turned racked falsehood into happy truth. Its power was to reveal divinity, infinite, co-evil with the mind of God. It bore within itself a seed, a flame, a seed from which the eternal is newborn, a flame that cancels death in mortal things. So this is a shloka from the Isha Upanishad. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmanye anupashyati. Yastu, this, sarvani, everywhere, bhutani, in existence, atmanye, Anupashyati. Pashyati is sees. The one who sees everywhere in existence only the God presence, only the Atma. Sarva bhuteshu chatmanam tato na vijugupsate. Vijugupsate is repulsion. Such a person cannot feel repulsion to anything because he doesn't see a form which is ugly or offensive. He's in touch with the essence behind that form, which is the beloved. He who sees God everywhere and in all things, such a person cannot hate or cannot be repulsed by anyone or anything at all. And this is a beautiful sketch. The forms have their backs turned to each other. They are fighting, they are holding their head, they are crying with their head buried. But within each form is the essence of the million-bodied one, which remains connected. You see the inner child constantly reaching out to the inner child, the deathless rose in one form, reaching out to the deathless rose in the other form, even when the forms are quarreling. So finally, we can never really cut ourselves away from anyone because whatever we do energetically, spiritually, we are always going to be in sync with them. So we stop here. Any questions, anything to share, anyone, before we sit for the last summarization? Okay. So let's just keep this screen share, this image. Instead of the little babies, you can even visualize mother in each form, holding hands or whatever you like. And then shut your eyes. So we started our class with the story of the Golden Buddha, where to save the solid gold Buddha from the invading armies, he was covered up with plaster and mud and clay. And centuries later, during excavation, they saw a golden gleam coming out through the clay statue, dug the clay out to discover a beautiful solid gold Buddha inside. This is a metaphor for all of us. We are caked with the clay of our ignorance, our ordinariness, our egocentric behavior. But the whole process of integral yoga is to chip away our ignorance, our egocentric thrust of existence, and to find the golden Buddha, the divine existence which is inside all of us. How do we go about this? Sri Aurobindo says an important step in his integral yoga is the constant smaran or remembrance that all without exception is the divine. And this divine presence, which secretly flowers behind everything, in Savitri he calls the Deathless Rose. Behind, behind our life, the Deathless Rose. Across the covert air the spirit breathes, a body of cosmic beauty and joy, unseen, unguessed by the blind suffering world, climbing from nature's deep surrendered heart, it blooms forever at the feet of God, fed by life's sacrificial mysteries. This deathless rose is the golden Buddha inside us, inside everyone without exception. In the Isha Upanishad, there's a line which says that one who sees God everywhere, for such a person, hatred or repulsion is impossible. Because for such a person, the whole world has turned into a temple ground and all discloses the unknown beloved. So with your eyes shut, think of a person who you have a dislike towards or irritation towards. You can open your eyes and see the screen share and then shut your eyes again just to know that deep down you're one with this person. This person is the whole, which to some of us is the mother or Christ or whatever else. And instead of the person's form, if you encourage your inner eye to see only Mother there, and repeat these beautiful lines from Savitri. The world is turned into a temple ground and all discloses the unknown beloved. This too is the unknown beloved. Do you feel a little softening towards the person? And to recollect this feel next time you're interacting with the person. I'm not interacting with the form of the person. I'm only interacting with Mother. Then think of a person you're very attached to, which also brings you pain, because that person may not be giving you the time, attention, affection that you're hungering for. Again, look at the screen share. And beyond the form of the person, just see Mother. And you already have that divine presence inside you. You already possess it. So why am I aching or hungering for something I already possess? As you in your mind's eye dissolve the form of the person you're attached to and see Mother shining through that form, see the hurt, disappointment that comes from attachment diminishes to that extent, and rooms, lines become so real. An enlightened person telling even the person who abuses, I want to hold you close like a lute so we can carry on with loving. You would rather throw stones at a mirror? I am your mirror And here are the stones. Slowly open your eyes whenever you feel like. And see you next week. Have a lovely week, all of you.
Thank you so much.
Welcome. Bye.
Thank you.
Most
you.
welcome. Most welcome.
Thank you, Anahita.
Most welcome.